Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm really glad that you're here and you have an interest in extended reality technologies. So we've been looking at these technologies for a couple of years and noticing an emergence of different technologies and also noticing opportunities and challenges for educators. And so that's really the goal today. We're trying to raise awareness of the technologies and help you to start looking at the opportunities and challenges that these technologies may present. So today we'll take a look at some of the higher end, what is possible with all of these technologies. Spend a little bit of time looking at examples, industry examples. And then we'll look at what these technologies offer, so what their functionality offers, and potentially offer something that we can't currently do or something that we could enhance. We'll look at some use cases and hopefully leave you with some curiosity about the use cases that are appearing in your own context, in your own discipline. We'll look at examples that are emerging in teaching and learning. We've recently worked with some Ontario colleges and universities, and so are getting an understanding of the landscape of these technologies within education. And of course, we'll look at the challenges, which really might be one of the first areas that you would want to start investigating. And we'll give you 10 items where you can actually start within your own context to investigate these technologies. So just a quick reference to the definition, extended reality. It's seeming to be an emerging term that is a simple way to describe augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. And the terms are very confusing because sometimes, for instance, Microsoft has really taken mixed reality as part of their marketing words for marketing. And so there's a lot of confusion around these technologies. Virtual reality, for instance, was part of China's 2019 plan for accelerating what they're calling virtual reality. So all of these technologies are referred to differently, but XR might be just a very simple way of describing them all at this point. I sort of prefer immersive technologies myself because the X is a little bit negative, I think, but we'll just go with that for now. Okay. So we'll just get into the slides here, and in the handout that was sent out, the goal of that was to give you a simple example to start to differentiate between AR and VR, the functionality or what it offers. The example for AR, were people able to do the activity beforehand? I'm just curious if it worked for people. If you wanted to, in the chat, you can just comment or raise your hand. And I should say, if you do have questions during the presentation, feel free to turn the chat on. I'm gonna turn it on now so that I can see. No, it didn't work for Barb. Okay. So feel free to ask questions and I'll try to answer them as we go along, or if there are more difficult questions, then we'll save those for the end, and hopefully there will be some time at the end for questions. All right, so that is the activity. I'm sorry it didn't work out for some people. The other thing that this technology is actually showcasing is 3D spatial search, which is something that Google is working on. And so the kind of interesting thing is that duck, the data of that duck is captured in 3D and is able to represent it three-dimensionally. So we'll take a look at the VR relatable example, and this is one from the Earth Sciences Department at U Waterloo, and really just trying to show you the difference there, because if you can imagine that instead of viewing that on your phone, you were viewing it with a device, with virtual reality, you would be entirely in that digital environment. Whereas with AR, you're in your own environment, and it's adding that duck into your environment. Let's take a look now at what the landscape of these technologies looks like in terms of what's possible. The first example here is a very recent example. So it was a news release from Johns Hopkins, and they performed a surgery using some sort of viewing device that enables the surgeon to see the open site. What you're seeing now is what the surgeon would be seeing in the open site over the open site. So it's providing data, CT scans and patient data over top in their field of view where they're operating. And so normally that information would be on a different screen, and the affordance here is that it's a more natural way of the surgeon it's not disrupting them to go to another device to look at something. So that's an example of AR where this information is added onto that environment and the surgeon can still see everything around them. Another example of AR, and AR is appearing in industry as a prototype now. There is some examples of industry formulating plans that include XR as part of their digital transformation strategy. So this is one example from Epson. I'll just describe this picture a little bit so you can understand what you're looking at. So this would be a remote person who is in an office providing expert support, and a field technician would be calling on them. The field technician would also be wearing glasses, and they can both see the actual world, the machine that the technician is fixing, and then the expert remote person is able to provide digital data to help that person solve this issue. And so it's sort of a hands-free, just-in-time, you don't have to go and search in a manual or that type of thing happening a little bit in industry. Holograms are possible, not in education right now, but this is just the landscape of what's possible. SAP, which is a software logistics company, they have a digital plan that includes extended reality technologies, and one being having meetings where I'll explain this picture as well. So the two people in this picture are present in the real world. They're wearing probably a HoloLens, which is a Microsoft product, and then they're able to see this person in their environment. So this person is added on to their environment. Virtual reality, if you can imagine a warehouse, this is a digital rendition of a warehouse. So for things like training, for safety training, for looking at processes and efficiencies, people can go into an environment together in a digital world, and there's opportunity for planning and design and training in a virtual context. This is another example of virtual reality, more on the consumer level. So I'll explain these pictures as well. This person is in their own space and they're breakdancing. They're wearing a virtual reality headset, and virtual reality headsets, they track your head position, and they have controllers. And so this hand controller and a foot controller is tracking the person dancing, and then they are connected to this digital space where people are dancing together. So this is sort of a dance competition. These are called virtual worlds. Virtual worlds, different terms for them. But really what a virtual world enables is a space for people to three-dimensionally interact in real time. And really that's what XR technologies are. It's really about moving from the two-dimensional of this screen view to a more three-dimensional view with interaction opportunities. So that's kind of what the shift is. And from an online learning perspective, which is where I'm from, but also for blended learning and on-campus learning, there are opportunities to do things that we potentially can't do in person. But we'll get a little more into that, and I'll continue on with some of these examples, just a couple more. This is another virtual world where people are bringing data into the world and representing the data, in this case molecules, and we'll just play a little bit of this one. Okay, so that was just to kind of give you a sense of the different type of interaction that can happen in a space like this. The next example, this is a term that I've recently discovered, and it's called digital twin. And there's actually research at the university happening in digital twins. So a very simple explanation of what a digital twin is. It's a 3D replica of a physical environment, and somehow these environments are connected, so the virtual environment can impact the physical environment. So that's just a really simple definition of what that is, but that could potentially be where these technologies are going to or moving to in the long-term future trajectory. One more example from the landscape, and this is a Microsoft demonstration of holograms again, and in this case there's artificial intelligence being used to translate from English to Japanese. So when I turn this on, the speaker is here. The speaker could be remote, and then if people were wearing the glasses in the audience, they would see the speaker on site as a hologram. So really just to kind of demonstrate the innovation or the extreme innovation that could happen with this kind of technology, but not where we are in the landscape of education, and we'll take a closer look at that in a couple of minutes. These technologies can be experienced on different devices, and really for education, where we should be starting as desktop and mobile and making sure that everyone can access these experiences. On the higher end of the scale, you'll have glasses, which are associated with the augmented reality spectrum, and virtual reality is headsets. So the headsets you can't see through, you're immersed in that world. Augmented reality, they are glasses, and you can see your own environment with things added to it. And all of the tech companies are very heavily invested in these technologies. So Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Samsung, others are very heavily invested capitally. Patents, there's tens of thousands of patents. So these technologies are really moving. They've already started moving, and if we're not looking at them, that's okay, but they're going to move without us regardless. And so it's probably a good opportunity for us to understand what they are, how they can be used, because they will evolve and change and hopefully get better. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, but it seems to be a bit of a cue for industry for industry where you want a technology to be is around here. So the risk is less, it's beyond infancy, it's proof of concept, prototype, and ready for exploration in industry. And so AR and VR are off that list now. They did have a peak where there was lots of hype, and then a time of disillusionment. The expectations really weren't met, but now they're sort of here where we're starting to see examples in industry and a higher level of maturity of the technologies. Probably around 2017 might have been this peak, and potentially the innovation trigger might have been when Facebook purchased a headset company. That's just my opinion, but that the research on AR and VR has been happening since the late 1990s, in fact. So it's not a new area. But what has provided an opportunity for consumer or mainstream use is really the explosion of mobile devices, because they use very similar technology in terms of the processor. They're both like a computer, and then the viewing is similar as well. So all of these component technologies, the cost of those has reduced. Mobile phones are accessible to consumers, and now that has sort of paved the way for access to these devices. Quick slide on predictions, forecasting. There's always lots of these visioning of how much money these technologies can generate. I sort of like this one because it's looking at how AR and VR will change our job market, potentially create jobs, enhance jobs, change jobs. So looking at an important area for us to start building our own digital fluency and literacy, and understanding how these technologies work, understanding the differences, how they can be applied to your own teaching, your own discipline. So if this is going to create growth, then there's opportunity for us as well to see how we can be a part of this growth and maybe inform the growth as well. So one last slide here before we step into the affordances of the technologies. I wanted to show you this because looking at this diagram really helped me to understand where AR, VR, extended realities fit into the picture of what's happening societally with technology. So all of these technologies are maturing: artificial intelligence, data, Internet of Things, and AR and VR is just one part of that. So these technologies are kind of all moving together, and I've recently learned this term, or paid more attention to this term, which is spatial computing, and its connection to potentially leading us to the fourth industrial revolution, or everything digital, the digitization and connection to the physical world. So that's just food for thought, something to think about, but to give you an understanding of where XR fits in with other technologies. And just looking here. At the questions. Okay, so I think we're okay with questions there. Let's take a look at affordances then. These are based on a couple of studies, so recently from EDUCAUSE, and I'll leave all of the, I'll be sure that you can have access to the slides with the references as well. This was an EDUCAUSE study looking at the landscape of US educational use of AR and VR. And so we're seeing things like skill-based, competency-based learning, hands-on experience, digital fluency and literacy. So helping students understand these technologies, where they're going and how to use them, and perhaps how to inform them as well. Researcher Jeremy Valenson from Stanford has been researching VR for 20 years and identifying that, again, that experience is a big functionality that VR can provide. The demonstration of the people dancing, the break dancing, it demonstrates that concept of feeling more present with other people. So the audio is spatial. So if someone in that virtual world is far from you, you will be able to hear them less. If they're right beside you, you can hear them more. And just to kind of reinforce that this isn't a new concept that's being researched. And so in 2010, some of the affordances identified there by Delangro, and again, experiential learning, spatial knowledge representation, so 3D representation, contextual learning, in the environment that you might be placed in the field, so in a similar environment. And then just to carry on with Valenson's research, so when to use this, when to use these technologies. And one of them is something that is impossible to do in real life. Rare and expensive, field trips, something dangerous, safety training, something counterintuitive that you wouldn't be able to provide learning about. And then I guess for us, innovation. So what we can't do currently, what can these technologies potentially enable, is a big question for all of us to be asking, I think. So let's look at use cases. This list here is not exhaustive. It's just some that I wanted to highlight. So for psychology, for example, therapy, VR is being used as a tool for therapy, exposure therapy, for example, empathy building. For health is a big, there are many examples in health as well as industry. And then the built and physical environment, which really encompasses many areas, from heritage, history, to engineering, architecture, planning. Environment is a big area at our institution where earth sciences and ecology are seeing the value of 360 images and tours, which is one of the little activities that you did at the beginning. So seeing the benefits of those for teaching and learning. Across the discipline, the virtual disciplines, the virtual worlds, enabling collaboration, communication, can they do something better than what we offer right now for online learning, for example? Could there be more connection? And can that create opportunities for group work and project work and that kind of thing? I'll talk a little bit about challenges, and ethics is one area that people are looking at right now. So how do these technologies, how are they being shaped? How was social media shaped, for example, and what can we learn from that? Can we start to try to inform some of these technologies, because they're really being built potentially without input from education as much as we want, or in arts and humanities, a lot of opportunity for new forms of storytelling, field trips. So if you would like to discover more, the site here, the Extended Reality site, has a compilation of reviews in different disciplines, and that might be a good starting point for you and your departments to look at, to see what other people have been doing in this area, and then assess whether that would be of benefit or relevance to you. A couple of examples here from the medical field, literature review identifying some applications in the medical field. Here's one from manufacturing, and then some guidance on what technology to use when, in a very detailed way. And here's one from the Government of Canada, identifying areas that service can be enhanced through these experiences. Okay, so let's look at XR for teaching and learning, because that's why you're all here. And we've been building our knowledge, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation. We've been learning where these technologies are appearing in education, and opportunities for where you might potentially want to start exploring. Social VR, the virtual worlds that we took a look at, is one area of potential investigation. 3D models, data visualization. This is one that I don't know very much about, but I have an example. 3D models, well, we'll look at some examples in a second. The 360 VR, tours, videos, immersive storytelling, and then 3D simulations. And the Games Institute at Waterloo is a research center that specializes in simulation design. Just to point that out. Okay, so social VR. This quote is interesting from an XR researcher, Kent Bai. So one of VR's biggest strengths is the ability to make those at a distance feel like they're physically near each other. And I think for me that's pretty interesting, especially I've been in online learning for 20 years, and a statement like that really interests me, because what can we do better, for example, in terms of helping our students communicate and collaborate in a more natural way? What are the benefits of this technology over Zoom, for example, which has suddenly become a ubiquitous tool? So if synchronous is if a synchronous classroom is active and there's discussion and seminar, I think I'll go to the next slide here, where things like design reviews could be happening, discussions, group work. Is there benefit to looking at these virtual worlds as an opportunity for a new form of collaboration? There are some example platforms that you could look at. They're all free to sign up and explore. AltSpace, for example, is a Microsoft product, and they're working on unifying their login with the other Microsoft products. Engage is an educational platform, and there's a free space for you to create a virtual world. Mark and I have been facilitating an instructor's community of practice for extended reality, and the last session, James McCarthy from the Map Analysis and Design Department gave us an overview of some of these tools. There are some really good resources here for investigating these tools further. So the next area emerging in education, 3D models, and these might be a relatable reference point for you. So thinking of things like a chemical, a molecule, being able to represent that in 3D and see it from different views. This is something that the chemistry department is working on. Thorsten Dykman and Steve Forsey are hoping to pilot a tool in this spring where students would be using their mobile apps to have a different interaction, different view of chemical molecules. Data visualization, I just wanted to show this example. It's something created by the University of Cambridge, and this data would normally be seen in a 2D display in Excel or something like that. And so is there opportunity, or what is the benefit, what could be the benefit of seeing data in a more three-dimensional space is a question. And the earlier example I showed SAP and their plans for XR transformation includes some of this three-dimensional functionality. So this is looking at a logistics system, for example. The next area is, excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink here. The next area is 360 VR, and this is one that we've seen emerge on our own campus. This example here, so this is just a screenshot from Google Maps that the Earth Sciences Department put up. The text on the left here, I don't want you to read all of that. I just want to highlight here that it was a grad student working under the guidance of Jen Parks and John Johnson, and so investigating the benefits of VR in geoscience. So how these technologies help to prepare students to before they go into the field is an interesting avenue, and seeing interest from the physical sciences area for this type of technology. And it's a fairly low cost, low skill. You don't need to know coding or anything like that to create these experiences that you can create. We have an example that all of these units work together to create a proof of concept. I'll bring it up here. So this is a demonstration of how an XR technology can be integrated into your current teaching. This looks like just a normal on-campus remote online course with the instructional sequence that you would normally provide, and then there is an XR experience that is dropped in there in with the instruction, and there are cues to help the person understand what they're looking at or what to look for in the experience. With 360 photos, you're able to look at the entire 360 view rather than the flat 2D. So there might be some benefits there that you see. And then with a tour, you can highlight, in this particular course, there are 5 field trips, and students are not always able to attend them for whatever reason. So this was an alternate format that was created in 2019, I believe. So you're able to zone in on things, to have more detail, and audio and text is also provided. So that's one example of a proof of concept. And the nice thing now, this, oh, there's our site there. The map analysis and design support unit, the ecology lab, they have taken that proof of concept that we collaboratively worked on, and now they've taken that and made it even better. They've added maps, which is really important in their context. And this would be probably a good area for people to look at as well, the support units in your own department. Their interest and involvement in these areas are really key to helping to move them forward. VR also includes video. So I'll turn up the volume a little bit. So 360 VR is very similar to the photo 360 VR in that in this video that I'll turn on in a second, I'll be able to scan around. So the viewer has a little bit of agency, which is also a challenge for people designing this. And it's not defined yet. So it's a very new area, if you can imagine, for arts and fine arts and people who could inform the design of these technologies as well, an important avenue. So I think the functionality or the affordance here is that if you're looking at these videos, then there's more presence, more feeling like you are in that environment. So you'll see I'm able to all right, so I'll just leave that with you. Those are really the areas that we're seeing as kind of lower stakes areas that you could definitely look at, especially 3D models and 360 tours and videos. There's existing content that you could be bringing into your courses potentially if you see value there, and we'll give you some resources for places where you could look for some of that content. So it makes it a really low stakes way of exploring the learning benefit of these technologies, because you're not creating it yourself, and you're potentially able to use something from an outside source, just like you would use a video in a course or something like that. The simulations, this is a big area, finding that the colleges especially, and probably with their skills and competency-based training, They're really leading the way on this in Ontario. Seneca College, George Brown, Conestoga. So they've all been working in these areas for about 3 years, and they have templates and things like that. So you can imagine for nursing, this nursing screenshot here is a simulation for nurses that Seneca acquired or worked with Oxford Medical. And so it's sort of an off-the-shelf product. And so really the power of the simulation is that it can imitate a situation or a process. And so there are many applications. Safety is one of the first ones that comes to mind, but something that is repeatable. If you're doing, if you're needing training in a repeated way every semester for a large group of students, then there might be some benefit there to creating this simulation that would enable this learning experience. And simulation really does capitalize on the main affordance of VR, which is experience. So you're feeling like you are in this hospital setting. It gives you that feeling. And so lots of opportunity for exploration of experiential learning with simulations, but they're very costly as well. And so that's something to consider. So if it's an important, you see a cost savings there for repeated training, it's providing something that you currently cannot, or it can provide it better. It strategically meets with goals of your department and the university, then there might be a good reason there to create a simulation. And then just another example here that Sher Chow sent from Systems Design. This is maybe one that you've seen before through the Games Institute's research talks. So this is a simulation, and it's being used with our older generation to encourage physical activity. And so here the person is wearing a headset and then being walked through different scenarios where they're engaging in physical activity. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we'll move on to the challenges and hopefully and then leave you with some places where you might want to look more. The challenges are big. I'm going to take a closer look at ethics and accessibility. Cyber sickness. So with virtual reality and the headsets, there is a population of people who feel a bit of car sickness when they use them. So that's definitely not good. But as the technology advances, and also how the design knowledge advances to mitigate those kinds of thing triggering happening, then for example, motion, if there's something with a lot of motion in that, then your body is static, but it feels like it's moving, and so there's this kind of disorienting, and some people experience this sickness. So design best practices is something that will need to be really investigated further. The quality content, there is some content out there, along with research. More empirical studies, A/B testing is needed. And then we talked about the cost of this. So it's really identifying those key strategic areas where there could be benefit. Scalability, sustainability, and lack of industry cohesion are similar. So what is happening now, all of these different devices are not talking to one another. So a device like the Facebook's headset, the Oculus, if an application is designed for it, it may not work on a different device. And the industry is aware of this, and they're working on standards, which is a good sign. And so things like really, hopefully, all of these things will be web-enabled and interoperability with different devices will be key. I wanted to spend just a bit of time talking about ethics, and on the worksheet I sent out, there's a little question on the third page. So this is from Kent Bai, who is a researcher in the area. He interviewed 1,500 people regarding use cases, applications of extended reality, and identified these areas where there's human interaction with these technologies, and I identified areas where we as educators could start to look at and potentially inform. So he indicated there's this pacing gap between, let's go back to the example of social media. So the technologies formed, the big tech companies created the technologies, and they emerged without any consideration of all of these things, potentially. Potentially you have other considerations. And so there's a call to participate in this global initiative to start to create a white paper, and hopefully that would be used as recommendations to inform more policy around these things, because XR really extends the opportunity for things like data collection, probably in a much larger way as well, because if our dimensions can be tracked, for example, what are the implications of that, and what can we do better to inform these technologies than maybe we had a chance to with social media. Just a quick addition to that. So this is one of the game engines, and game engines are required to make these simulations. A little quote from their marketing: "You can create a photorealistic digital human in a matter of minutes." And so that's interesting. And what does that mean for us, really? I'll just play a tiny clip of that one. So these are digital representations and not real people. Okay, so hopefully that just gives you a flavor of some areas of opportunity where we could perhaps inform these technologies as they are shaping and advancing. Accessibility, it's positive to see groups like the XR Association developing accessibility guidelines. Accessibility is key for education, access and accessibility. And so what we could do now is apply what we know in from the 2D environment to make things accessible and apply that into the 3D environment. And so there's been some work in the 3D environment to define what those accessibility measures are. A more accessible approach, I mentioned the web being really a key to advancing these technologies for the level of education. So here's an example. This was an award given to, it was the education experience of the year in WebXR. So you might notice that the fidelity is not quite as rich as some of the other examples that I showed you. Here they're in a museum and they're looking at artifacts, so you can click on the artifact and interact with it. there's text and images, and someone can walk around this gallery. And this is all done through the web, and that's really the exciting part of it, because it's accessible, more accessible. Okay, so we have about 8 minutes here, and I'll go through the where to start section, and then hopefully there will be an opportunity for questions if I haven't been keeping up with the questions there. Let's see. And I'm just gonna have a quick drink. Okay, so where to start? Really, building knowledge together is why Mark and I are here today, and why we've been running the XR Community Practice Group to raise awareness. And so hopefully if you are interested and you see value, you'll work with your department to raise awareness. The community of practice also gives you an opportunity to see what other people are doing, the questions people have, and the kinds of technology technologies that are evolving. One area that doesn't require any digital skills is looking at student research and assignments and assessment that involve these technologies, and in that way you're also providing an opportunity for students to gain literacy and fluency with these technologies. And also with regards to the ethics, really helping students to critically evaluate these technologies and the impacts of the technologies that potentially could happen in the future. We talked about use cases in the context of your discipline, and there's a compilation of resources there on the Extended Reality site. So I hope that you will take a look at those if you're interested, or do your own searches within your context of your discipline. These, just to summarize, these are the areas that you could learn about more and assess the value for your own context. There's an online course that came out recently from Michigan, Extended Reality for Everyone, and their goal is really to awareness raising as well, and awareness raising in the context of education. That would be a really good course for, it's a 6-week course, not a lot of commitment, and it would be good if you're interested in this area and want to learn more. There are groups that you could join up with. Rob Therold from Georgian College leads a Facebook group, Educators in VR, and there's a lot of rich discussion and comments and sharing of emerging technologies. Educators in VR is an AltSpace group, so this is one of those virtual worlds where you can engage with your desktop as well. You don't need a headset for it. So there is a group, and they have meetings weekly and monthly. We had a recent invitation to join a webinar that's happening next week. So it's immersive technology at the University of Buffalo with their community of practice, and they're covering geology, social work, and surgery. If anyone is interested in attending that, there's the registration there. So join the community of practice. Mark and I are Mark is the lead of a research project offered through the Desire to Learn Innovation Guild, and we're trying to collect activities and knowledge that's happening on campus at our institution, along with Guelph and Manitoba, and we're trying to create sort of a landscape of the activities that are happening. If you wanted to participate in sharing about your experiences with extended reality, the Extended Reality site is another good place, and then I'll just end off with consider answering the call for participating in developing this white paper that could have some potential impact on informing where these technologies go. And then just the last slide here is a word cloud of all of these different technologies and things like spatial computing, Industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. If that's where we're going, then it's a good place to start now and building our knowledge as a group.